Welcome. This is a cover letter workshop. It's something we do at least usually a couple times a year. Now, today, for whatever reason, we didn't receive a lot of cover letters to review. So we do have some, and we'll review those. But I have enabled a chat. So if anybody wants to put their cover letter in the chat, I'm happy to also review it on the call today, and you can take your name out, and I don't need anybody's name or anything in there, so it is all confidential when you provide your cover letter. Let me get into some stuff here. Give me 1 second. I'm just gonna stop my show. Well, I don't just for a second and find some of the cover letters we have, and we will get started. Couple of notes about your cover letters. And again, I will take a lot of questions today as well. I'm just pulling something up here. Yeah, so if anybody wants to put their cover letter in the chat, I'm happy to review it on this call as well, because again, it's important. I'd like to have more cover letters. It's funny, the last one of these we did, we had, I don't know, like more cover letters than we could handle. And same thing with the resume workshop we did a couple weeks ago. But today, for whatever reason, not a lot of people have sent over their cover letters. I'm happy to review it. To review your cover letters, anyone that sends new cover letters over. Before we get started, I wanted to review a couple of things that people are always asking about. Now, let me just see here. Oh, good. Okay. And again, if anybody has any questions about cover letters as well, you're welcome to ask them in the chat, and I will also answer them during the call. A couple of things I wanted to just go over real briefly that are related to anytime someone is hiring you, what they're asking. And the cover letter provides a good way for you to answer these questions. So anytime someone's hiring you, regardless of your level, when interviewing you, or when reviewing your resume and cover letter, and I'll just go over these. And I cover these all the time, but these are very important. The first one is, can you do the job? Will you do the job long-term? Do the job long-term. The job. Are you a good cultural fit? Do we like you? Like you. And then the other is, can you be managed? So these are six things that everyone's asking. And can you do the job essentially means your resume is really what answers that. So your resume answers whether or not you can do the job. And this just means, do you have the education, the skills, and the experience that the employer is looking for? The idea would be, if you're just hypothetically, if you're a medical, I don't know, if you're a defense attorney that defends doing commercial litigation, do you have the same kind of education, skills, and experience that people working in that firm have? And if you don't, that's a problem. And so your resume really answers that question. You can't, if someone takes a look at your resume and they're going to really understand that right away, that you write in your cover letter probably is not going to convince people of that fact. So I'll tell you an interesting story, and this is the attorney search. And we write letters for all of the candidates that we represent. And then it used to be a very big deal at our company. All of our recruiters would sit around, we'd have these meetings every week and every 3 months, and we talk about the letters and how our letters are drawing out the person's experience and what we're doing and how we're making the person likable. And one thing I would say, and this is very important, is what we do in our cover letters for a candidate that helps a candidate that a candidate can't do themselves, is we will talk about them as individuals. So we'll say things like, we'll say that, I don't know, if the person's parents died when they were young and they were raised in a foster home, and things that wouldn't go on their resume, or if the person is the first person in their family to go to college, and just anything that makes the person started working when they were 12 years old, anything that's unusual that humanizes the person. Because what I found, it was interesting when we sat around. So recruiters represent lots of different candidates, and not everyone they represent gets a job, of course. And what we found, when doing that, is the people that I was able to connect with the most personally and write the best letters were always the people that I ended up placing. The people that I couldn't connect with or didn't want that connection, when I would write a letter without a connection, wouldn't get jobs. And this is going to all make sense in a moment when we start talking about this. But the idea is that what everyone is seeking is a connection. And when someone else talks about you in a cover letter and brings out your skills and what makes you unique and makes you likable, it's a very big deal compared to what the resume says. So lots of people have good resumes. There's nothing, there's really, and so that's not when you're trying to get a job, you're not necessarily competing on that. Now, there's employers who will hire you because of your resume, and that's fine. But the resume is really what tells if you can do the job. Your cover letter is an opportunity to do something else. So the next one is, will you do the job long term? So the way an employer gets that idea is and this is when and just think about it from your standpoint. So can you do the job? And again, I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's not that relevant, but just think about yourself. If you're hiring somebody to paint your house and they show up and they say they've never painted, but they've done a lot of plumbing, that's not going to be helpful to you, even though they're both the same sort of thing. They're working someone that can do the job is someone that just has the skills and experience. And a defense attorney trying to do plaintiff's work might not be able to do the job. These are all things that the law firm's looking at. Doing the job is really, your resume answers that question. So what happens is someone takes a look at your resume and they'll just say, this person, so I noticed someone raised their hand, and if you have a question, you can ask it in the chat and I will answer it. And I will call on people. But this just means, do you have the skills and experience to do the work? And law firms that are looking at your resume, pretty much what they'll do is they'll look at your resume. All right, you can ask us in the Q&A. I'm sorry if the chat's not working. I don't know why it's disabled. But anyway, so this is what can you do the job? And your resume answers that question. And so you're never going to, if you don't have the skills and experience to get a position, you're almost always not going to be able to get in based on with anything but your resume. Now, can you do the job long term, or will you do the job long term, is basically another question. So do you look committed to the practice setting, which is a law firm, practice area, and where any place you work, and also the geography? So employers aren't stupid. They don't want to hire people that come in and are going to leave, because when people leave, it undermines the leave. It wastes training time. It upsets clients. It undermines other people that are working there. It makes other people unsure that are working in the employer about working there. So there's just a lot of reasons, and it just means you're a bad investment. And so that's one of the reasons that I tell people that it's not always a good idea to be hopping around. People want to believe you're going to do the job long term. So for the most part, your resume answers that question. Not always, but your resume answers that question. If they see a lot of movement, on your resume, meaning you're moving around to different places and doing a lot of different things, and you're working in different practice settings, or you're working as a litigator, then you go in-house, and then you go back to a firm, and then you go a clerk. This is just, the law firm knows you're going to leave. And so that scares them. And to some extent, you can answer that in your cover letter. So can be answered in the cover letter. And we'll talk about that in a minute. If you have a lot of movement, but not always. But not always. So in a second. Okay, then the next one is, can you be managed? So again, what law firms want is they want to hire people that will follow instructions. And do things the way they want. They want done. And so this particular aspect of it, which basically means, will you follow instructions? Are you someone that's able to do what you're asked, and that sort of thing? Because if people are too independent, and this is a big issue, if people are too independent, do not respect authority, they undermine the whole system. If you have certain associates that refuse to work on weekends, or they refuse to come into the office, then it undermines everybody. And that's a problem. So you're entitled to have these to not be managed, but if you're like, that's a problem. So things that make you look like you cannot be managed are moves, which we talked about above. And then the other thing would be entrepreneurial ventures, because most people that do entrepreneurial things ultimately go back to doing that. Ventures. And then getting fired is one, getting fired on your resume, and similar things like that. There's a lot of things that would make it look like you can't be managed. So your resume also answers that question. You can take a look at someone's resume, and you can get a sense right away if they could be managed or not. But not always. People by the way, that means it's interesting, but people that can be managed will tend to talk in a different way about things than people that can't. So this also can be answered in cover letter, but not always. Okay, so all these things that we talked about, these first three, are the things that a resume does. And your history, in terms of what you've done before, is pretty much all answered on your resume. So your ability to do the job, if you're going to stick around, and whether or not you can be managed, your resume is going to answer that question. And these are three questions that we spent most of our time with in the past couple of weeks ago when we did the resume workshop. And you can't change these things. And these are things that are on your resume. Now you can dumb them down and you can do all sorts of things to make it look like that, but you often cannot fix them. These are the four that really make a difference, or the three. Do you want the job? Are you a cultural fit? Or do we like you? These things can make a huge difference. And it's very interesting. I have firms that like me and like me a lot, and I make a lot of placements there. I would make placements at those firms not because the resumes are any better, but because the firms like me. And it's like that. If people like you, that makes a difference. If you really want the job, it makes a difference. And if you're a good cultural fit, that makes a difference. And so I'm going to talk about these three things a lot today when we talk about the resumes and the cover letters, because this is really where you can really make a difference. And it's where people that get jobs they shouldn't, that are above their pay grade, get jobs. It's how all sorts of things can happen. So if you go to a really good law school and you're the bottom of your class, you can still get a job at a good firm if you do these things well. If you go to a poor law school and you do well, but you don't think it not well enough to get a job in a big firm normally that interviews on campus, you can get a job if you do these things well. There's all sorts of things you can do to stick out in these. And these three are really extremely important. This is also interview advice. You can get jobs very well if you want the job, and you can get jobs that you normally wouldn't if you really want the job. You can get jobs if you're a good cultural fit. And cultural is about a lot of stuff, and I'll talk about that. And then you can get jobs if you're really likable. Do you want the job is the first one I'll start with. And people like people, or people want to hire people that want to work there, that really want to work there. So think about and let me just back up for a second. The people that are on this call, there's some people that are probably at really big, prestigious firms, as there always are, and people from those kind of firms seem to like these calls because they learn a lot, but there's people that aren't, and there's people, it doesn't matter. But one of the things is, a lot of law firms, they're constantly dealing with this kind of cycle of people that can't be managed, that leave, and that can't do the job. So all sorts of people, wherever you've worked, I'm sure you've worked around people that can't be managed, that are not following orders, that are leaving early and sneaking out, that are not working when they're supposed to be working, that are people that are not following instructions and do things their own way, people that are always looking for other jobs, talking about different things. And so this is what law firms deal with all day, every day. And so if you were an employer, you wouldn't like that. You wouldn't like dealing with people that can't be managed, that don't appreciate the firm you have, that aren't committed and leaving and quitting all the time. That would be hard for you. Just think about it. It's not to say that you have to feel sorry for your employers, but this is what they deal with on a day-to-day basis. And then they have to use recruiters, and they have to post jobs, and they have to hire, they have to do all these things to constantly bring people in. So what is really refreshing to them is when someone really wants to work there, not just someone that says, I want to work there and it's a good salary, but someone that really wants to work there, meaning a person knows about the firm, about the employer, they've spent time thinking about it, about the firm, they've spoken to people there and know what the kind of work they do. They've taken the time to connect with recruiting personnel. They have just all sorts of things to show they want the job. And then the person is psyched up and to interview. Psyched up. And then the cover letter makes a good case about the employer, why they want to work there specifically. Okay. And this is really one of the most important things. So I'm going to tell you a couple of a couple of kind of fun stories and kind of, but they make this point, I think, to some extent. So when I was young, I've told the story before, but I went to my mom said I could get a dog. And I looked forward to it for a long time. And we drove out to this farm, and there was a bunch of puppies, and I picked out a puppy. And then we were leaving. My mom said, "Why did you pick that puppy?" And I said, "That's the puppy that ran up to me and seemed like it liked me the most." So I picked a puppy that was essentially the run of the litter, but it was the nicest puppy. And that's the one I picked. That's how people work. If someone likes you, you like them back. I'll tell you another funny story, which is my first wife that I married. I was in a bar in law school one day, and she came up to me and said, "How come you're the only person that's never talked to me? I really want you to. I've always wanted you to talk to me," and that sort of thing. And so that's how I met her. Now it was interesting. So that was, again, someone like me. Now, if you meet people all the time, and the people that really seem to like you, people like dogs. Dogs like them, so they have them around their house. They put up with them doing all these, chewing up their things and going to the bathroom all over their house. But dogs like people. They love them, and so everyone loves dogs. That's their survival instinct. And we'll talk about that. But people that really want the job are people that tend to do the best. I had this interesting thing happen. There's always attorneys that are so good at getting positions. And there's also, and I don't know what makes them so good at this, but they're able to, I do know, but anytime they interview from someplace, they go in, they know all about the firm. They talk about how all their skills can meet that. They're able to talk about how much they want the firm, they want to work there, all these different sorts of things. And those are the people that get the job. And I used to be in admissions. I did admissions work for the University of Chicago, and it was interesting. Like, they would get all these applicants and admit, I don't know what it was, 10% of them or something. But the people that got in most of the time were the people that went in and interviewed and said they really wanted to go there. The people that, if you didn't do that, even if you had great numbers, that they would figure that you were just going to go someplace else if you got in. So people that really want something, if you're able to make that clear, that's a huge deal to places. And resume does not answer that question, does not answer. Cover letter answers. Cover letter answers that question. And we'll talk more about that in a minute when we start looking at cover letters. But the cover letter answers that question. The resume cannot really answer the question if you really want the job. The resume can answer if you can do the job. It can answer if you can be managed, but it cannot answer if you really want the job. And so the resume, the cover letter is what does that. And resume does not. It does not always. And so if you really want the job and you really want something, people are going to be persuaded that you are going to want to work there. I've had so many people, like I get, one example is like resumes from recruiters. We get resumes from recruiters every day, and it's very hard to keep up with them. But and it's not that I'm saying that's a bad thing, it's a good thing, but it's difficult to sort the people that really want the job from the ones that don't. I remember some of the people that I've hired to work here as recruiters are people that have just contacted me and been like, "I've wanted to work for you for years. I'm at the end of this thing. I love this about what you do." And boom. That's a great way to get a job. So if I go into a pile of recruiter resumes that we've received, it may be 5,000 in the past year. I don't know what it is. It's a lot. Now, most of those you don't have the skills, but the people that have done something like that are the people that anybody would be interested in. And people that get your attention are the ones that look like they want the job. So wanting the job is something you can do in a cover letter. You can tell the person why you want that specific job. And why wouldn't you? Do you think, and I want to make sure you understand, if I've received 4,000 applications, and out of that, I might not have interviewed very few. The only people that I'm really interested in are the people that really want something. So if someone really wants something, then that's a huge thing. I had an instance once where I went in to interview in a firm. Where was it? It was a firm that's no longer in existence, but called Dewey Ballantyne. And I went in, and the first person I interviewed with was head of the hiring committee. And I said to her that my grandfather had gone to college with Thomas Dewey, and he always said if I became a lawyer, I should work at that firm. And I've always wanted to work here. Boom. That was all I needed to do. You got the job. So out of all the other people that they probably could have hired someone that really wants it. So your cover letter, if your cover letter is really freaking good and it sticks out, it will make that case. And you should think through that. Now, a lot of people do the same cover letter for every employer and basically the same thing. And all you're doing there is really not giving yourself a chance. If you really want a job and you send a really good cover letter and you figure out who to send it to, like this first one, Dear HR Administrator, that doesn't do anything. This is just, you can see here, this is just a resume. This is just a resume. So your cover letter should never do this. It shouldn't tell people you can do the job. You can, if you have a lot of moves, sometimes you can advance that, but it really needs to show that you really want the job. Because if you really want something, just think about what somebody that if somebody wants, what's the difference? The difference is they will learn, or they will commit, they'll take instruction, and they'll be managed. Instruction and be managed. Manageable. They will, what else? They will commit. They will learn what they need to do to succeed. They will do everything they can to get along with others. They will respect authority. They will be grateful for opportunity. And more. And these are just huge things. Think about this whole idea of gratitude too. So someone that gives you the idea that working for you or doing something for you is just amazing, and that's something that would really be meaningful to them and they would really appreciate the opportunity, is a big deal. It's something that makes a difference and that people want. So people like people that like them. And if you really want the job, that's a huge thing. That's something that is going to make a big difference. So you can communicate that on the cover letter, and we will cover that. And again, if you have cover letters you'd like me to review, put them in the Q&A, but we'll cover that in a little more detail because this is huge. If you want something, then it's going to make a difference. And employers would be insane not to hire someone that wants it. So I had an experience once where I had an in-house counsel job, and then someone walked into my office and said, I really want to work for you. I've seen this ad. This would be an incredible opportunity for me, all this sort of thing. And I hired the person, and it was literally the worst person I'd ever hired. And I mean, in terms of attorneys, and I spent, because she wanted the job so much and acted like she did, I spent a lot of time trying to coach her and make her effective, and it just never worked. But because she wanted the job so much, I just felt like I really wanted her to work there. People that want the job, it makes a huge difference. I told another story, and I'll tell this one again, but I've told this before. When law schools, a lot of them, and the one I went to, a lot of times people that would get waitlisted would come, and the day class started would be sitting out in front of the admissions office when there's hundreds of people maybe that have been waitlisted, saying, I'm here ready to go to class if you want to admit me. And those are the people a lot of times, at least the one I went to, and this is of course a long time ago, would get in. I remember walking past the admissions office and I'm like, what are all these people doing? And they were like, and I knew, and they were like, they sit here and they wait to see if they will let them in. And it makes a difference. Those are the people that really want to go there. So they could just call some random person on the phone and admit them, but they're letting people in that are taking the initiative to show up and really want something. So really wanting something is a huge difference. Sometimes people will do things like, I will work for free if I can I show you? Or they'll do informational interviews. There's all sorts of things you can do. But if you really want the job, people will be very interested in hiring you and you will rise to the top. And very few people do this. It's the biggest mistake that you can make in interviewing someplace. So what does a cultural fit mean? So cultural fit's important, and I'm going to bring it up, and it's not something I'm happy talking about, but I will talk about it because it does make a difference. And it's, of course, the exact opposite of what I should be talking about in this day and age, but I'm going to talk about it. People will hire people that they identify with, and that can be the same background, which means it could be schools, It could be religion. It could be interest in athletics. It could be politics, shared upbringing. I don't know, but I could get into it. It could be all sorts of things. It could be sometimes it's race, sometimes it's sex, it could be a bunch of different things. And there are lots of things that are culturally related, but it could also just be demeanor. It could be meaning versus introverted versus who knows, but there's just different personality types out there, and a lot of times you can tell the type of person, the culture of some place, based on all these different things. There are law firms that I had this incredible experience. I was I got this job at this Dewey Ballantyne firm, and then after I'd been there for a while, I discovered that most of the partners and it was not a huge office, were all Catholic and went to the similar, and is that an accident? I don't know, but it's not, and they all went to church. It's not that common for people to all go to church in LA, and it was interesting. And maybe they were hiring people of similar backgrounds. Now, I was not of that background, but at the same time, there are law firms. There's a firm in LA that I was talking to a hiring person there once, and they interviewed someone and they said, we're pretty much a group of, and then they used a religion. I don't want to say what it is. And we hire people like us. And is that discrimination? I don't know, but that's just how it works. So sometimes people will hire people from similar backgrounds. Some firms are composed of a lot of people that have a lot of interest in sports or athletes. Some people, there's firms that are Democratic and firms that are Republican. And again, I can't control this stuff. It's just how it is. And it's how, so if you feel like there are firms out there that you might be and some firms are working or have composed of people from working class versus people from working class versus class backgrounds, and others are, I don't know, but whatever. It's just how it is versus people from academic family. This is just how it is. And it's not like that, of course, with all firms, but they all have different cultures, and it's just what it is. So sometimes with a law firm, you have to understand what the culture is. And when you go and you interview with these firms or you know about them, you may be a good cultural fit. And that means you may play a sport with someone, you may know someone from a group, you may know someone from, I don't know. But if you're a good cultural fit, that may be an opportunity to bring that out in some way in your cover letter. Now, you don't say that I went to this temple or whatever with this person, but law firms are often looking for those clues. Now, do I think that's right? I'm not making any statements one way or another about that, but sometimes that's how it works. So if you understand the culture of a place and you feel comfortable with that culture, then that's probably something. If you can bring that up, that's a good thing. So how would you bring that up? So I'll give you an example. So there are places where people work extremely hard, and there are firms where people work 3,000 hours a year, and that's just what's expected, and that's the culture. The culture is not based on race or schools. It's just work on being very hard. And if that's the kind of culture that you're comfortable in, you bring that up. You talk about that in your cover letter. I'm used to working hard hours and commit and all this, and people are gonna like that. Or if you say I want to be part of a place that's congenial, and this is really important to me, that's a cultural thing at some firms too. So congenial, and I don't know, but there's all sorts of things. So if you understand the culture of a place, then that's also very important. Your cover letter can do that. Now, the next one, and this is the final one, is, and let me just talk about this real briefly. So, what happens? What happens when someone is a good cultural fit? Cultural fit. So what happens when someone's a good cultural fit is extreme. It's a big deal. So what happens when someone's a good cultural fit is that person makes friends and feels supported by the firm and stays. That person is coached and gets informal knowledge and all sorts of things. Knowledge. Others are comfortable around that person. Sorry. The person entrusts them. The firm believes they are a good representative. And make no mistake about it, law firms have cultures. They have very well-defined cultures, and they a lot of times will pick that up from the resume, but they have cultures, and certain people fit into those cultures and others don't. And it's not to say that there's no law firms want diversity. They want diversity of thought. But they, at the same time, they also have cultures, and people are animals, and animals stick together in a way that where they want to be around people that they trust. And I'll answer questions related to this, but this is a very important thing. Your cover letter can sometimes do that. And then the final one is, do we like you? And this is, I talked about this a lot in the introduction, but this means, does the firm like something about you? And feel positive towards you, and not negative. So people like certain types of people. So there's a rule out there that 1/3 of the people that you meet will like you. Will like you. If you 1/3 won't. 1/3 will not care, and then 1/3 will be ambivalent. They won't care one way or another. And so a lot of times your cover letter can bring you on the side of someone that's likable, just as your resume does. But saying nice things in the cover letter, buying with people in a way in your cover letter, doing things that are related to, that are connecting with people, are going to come through in your cover letter. And everything really is about your cover letter. And again, I'm going to talk about cover letters, but this type of human connection is extremely important. People want connection. People want to feel liked. People want to feel like their employers are liked. People want to feel like you're safe, and people want to like other people. So one of the differences between, and this is, I've talked about this a lot before, but you have products and you have services. And when people use a product, they know that they're getting, if you buy a BMW, you know it's going to be sporty and whatever. And then if you buy a certain brand of clothing, what it stands for. But when you buy a service, you don't know what's in store. And the thing that people really want from services most of the time is they want some sort of connection. So if you're represented by a lawyer and the lawyer is not asking you questions and doesn't seem like they care about you, you're not going to like them back. And so people want to work with people, and they want to have employees and others that will like them. And so they want to like those people. And so you need to be likable. And this is a very difficult topic to address properly, but being likable is really what makes a huge difference, and in that sort of connection. And so we'll talk about how to be likable. But being likable means, really, this is what it means. It means that your cover letter needs to be about the lawyer and the person you're writing more than you. So just think about receiving a letter. So if you receive a letter from someone and that letter is saying, just the person's just talking about how great they are, that's not really going to do much for you. But if you receive a letter and the letter says, we like you for this reason, we like you for this reason, we think you're great for this reason, that's really a big deal. I had something that was funny, and I was telling this because everyone in this college, lawyers and things, and law students, I had this when I was in college. I had this law school. It was a good law school that I was interested in going to. And they wrote me a letter rejecting me and telling me all the things they liked about me in the rejection letter. It's like one paragraph, but it was based on, and I was like, what the heck? And I didn't know what to make out of it. And I went to the law school advisor and I was like, what do I do with this? And I kept it because it was like a very nice letter. So very few people take the time to write things about us and things to us that are nice. So how would your cover letter make people like you? There's a lot of ways you can do that. One way would be, if a law firm has an opening, you call them up and you talk to someone there, and maybe it's someone that is in a recruiting role, a recruiting coordinator or someone, and if they'll talk to you, ask them a little bit about the job, and then you write a letter Your cover letter talks about how great the person was, about all the nice things they said about the job and what a great job they're doing. Now, you don't say it that way, but you would say something along those lines. All of a sudden, that person likes you. Your resume, because they're thinking very positive thoughts, goes right to the top of the pile, and they like you because you write that. If you write a cover letter and it talks about someone at the firm that you really admire and something along those lines, they like you. If you've done something, if you have some way to connect with people, if you have some shared experience and know someone there and admire them, the thing that makes you likable is going to have to make some sort of personal connection. Now, you can talk about the bad experiences and things that you've had in your cover letter if you want, but really it's about making some sort of connection. And that connection is generally going to be with someone there or some way to make a connection that makes you stand out. So people will write cover letters all the time and they'll say, I'm very familiar with your firm's commitment to such and such, and I like you and I'd like to work. That's not a real connection that makes you likable. A real connection that makes you likable is something along the lines of someone's doing a great job, or I just think this firm is so amazing. I've read articles by this person, or I've used the briefs of this person I've been collecting them since I've been this age and for the past 4 years. All those sorts of things make you likable. So anything you can write about the employer as opposed to you, the employer and people there, opposed to you, is going to make you stand out. So I had an experience where I wrote, this is a funny letter, but first job I got in Los Angeles was with Quinn Emanuel. And all my cover letter said, it was a very short letter. It was addressed to the hiring partner, but it said, I want to practice litigation at its very highest level. I've talked to people. I know that's exactly what you do. I'm in Detroit where you just finished a big case. I'd love to talk to you. And 3 days later, Bill Urquhart, who's sadly no longer alive, after sending that letter, called me up and was like, this is amazing. I love your letter. We've never hired anybody from your law school, and I'd love to meet you and fly you out here right away. And then he gave me a job within an hour, a couple hours of getting into their office. And that was great. But the point is that cover letters like that flatter people, that make people feel good about themselves and make them like you, make a huge difference. And this is what no one does. And I'm just telling you all these 4 things, and I will send around these notes in a Word document, by the way, before the end of this call, difference. So let's go into these cover letters now and look at them. So give me 1 second and I will pull up. I just want to do one thing here. I'm going to open Grammarly. Give me 1 second. Now we will take a look at this. So give me 1 second. Okay, I always, when I talk to people, I really do think it's important to be using all of these softwares that are out there. This is an example, like you can see here, this is a 78. You should have your letters the things that you're writing be at least 99. There's really no excuse for it. And here they're doing things you can see they're shortening sentences. Sometimes this comma is not necessary, but you can see rearranging sentences. So every attorney should be using this. You should be using it for every email you send. You should use it for every article you write, anything. Look at this, part-time. These errors are serious. And freelance, of course, is not spelled that way. So everyone makes these mistakes, and attorneys are expected to write very well, and this is part of the job. So if you are writing a cover letter, so this is, we'll start getting into Harrison's rules about cover letters, which I'll also send around. If you're writing a cover letter, so if you're writing a cover letter, the first rule is to not make any mistakes, to not make any grammar mistakes. Grammar, spelling, and let me just tell you why. And I'm giving this and you must use Grammarly and other tools, which are Pro Writing Aid and all these different things. Let me tell you why this is so important. And I feel bad because I'm talking, I don't know if this resume is from an attorney or who it's from, or it's this, but it's very serious. So if you're writing a cover letter and you're making mistakes about grammar, spelling, attorneys are hired to be able to write, that's your job. So if you're making errors in your cover letter, you're showing that you're not a good attorney. Why in the world would you do that? It's very serious. And you cannot write a cover letter and expect to make errors and get a job. Now, there are firms that will hire you, and even if you're making errors, but this is what attorneys are hired to do. So if you're making errors in your cover letter, you are hired to represent others and to represent other people and businesses and make them look good. And how can you do that? How can you possibly do that if you can't do that for yourself? Extremely important. And it's interesting too, because I work with people that are at really good firms like Sullivan and Cromwell and all these different, and Davis Polk and things. And when these sorts of people at these firms like turn in a resume or they turn in a business plan or something, they're spending days like working it, reworking it, tightening the language, rethinking things and looking at it in different ways. And so that's how it's done. And it's also how you need to do things as well. You want to make sure that when you're writing a cover letter that you're not making mistakes. This person's cover letter, you can just see here, all these issues there's problems and there shouldn't be here. And so I'm not going to go through and make all these changes right now. I'm going to work on a cover letter, but this is a problem. All these punctuations, and there's all these rules. There's rules about capitalizing when numbers are spelled out versus written out. There's rules about capitalizations and things, but that's a problem. This is the first thing here. This is a long paragraph. And one of the big rules about writing is you should not make the reader work. So make the reader work. So the cover letter, what the cover letter needs to do, it needs to be short. It needs to make its points quickly and directly. So let's talk about this. So this person's Dear HR Administrator. So first of all, this particular letter, you should never address a letter to an HR administrator. With LinkedIn, and all these different, in Google and all these different sources, you need to always look up who the person is, who the hiring people are. Hiring people are in the firm employer, and send it to them. This is not Dear HR Administrator. It should be Dear Person. So that the first thing is you want to go in and you want to address it to the person. And extremely important. Even if the firm says if you're finding a job somewhere online and it says send it to HR administrator at this, you still want to do your best to address it directly to the person. Okay, so this right here, I have considerable education experience in law, thank God. ADR and investigations. My master thesis was centered on ADR environment, but I have a strong appreciation for involved in all kinds of disputes in a less adversarial manner than going to court. At Boeing, in addition to doing this, at the Merit Systems Protection Board, I did this, I'm confident. Okay, so the first thing is if there is a job you're applying to, you need to note it in the cover letter. If you're not applying to a job, which is okay, you need to give the employer a reason why. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So someone that gets this email, if there's just this, there's not really much to go on. So I have considerable experience in law, ADR, and investigations, the master thesis, blah, 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 at the U.S. Merit Systems Protection Board. Okay, so the first thing is this is way too long, and this paragraph is way too long. There's lots of ways you can do it, and I'll just give you some examples here of how you can break this stuff up and do things in a way that is going to make sense to the employer. What's going there? So you would do something like this. You would go relatable experience, blah, 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 something like that. So these are obviously not, but that's make things easier for people to read by doing things this way. So you use bullet points and everything to make it easier for people to read. And so people will read things when they're much easier. So this is just an example. And so this, you take a long paragraph and you make it like this. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of things where people like to put down their education and the things that they've done. Most firms do not, when you're writing something for a job, especially this person that is an experienced attorney, it looks like, the last thing in the world you want to do is talk about your education. So law firms especially, and most employers, want to hire people with experience, with practical experience. And for the most part, do not care too much about your education and a specific subject matter. So you may ask yourself why, and especially if like this person that's got a master's degree in ADR methods or whatever. So the problem with education is that most of, and again, every attorney has to go to school and get a law degree, but most people that get educations like this person, it's not necessarily going to help this person at all. So just taking a master's thesis and writing about something is not necessarily going to benefit the employer. Now, this is interesting, this person's experience at Boeing. So you could put that in there for this ADR job, but I don't think anybody wants to see that this belongs on the resume. Belongs on a resume. And this also, you could learn from the resume. From resume. This also would be from the resume. So all this stuff you can see here is everything that's here so far is just from the resume. There's nothing unusual about anything on this resume so far that you couldn't learn on the resume. So the purpose of your cover letter is not to talk about your resume. You talk about your resume. Okay, I'm confident I could serve so-and-so well in this position. I've long enjoyed working in academia. Ooh. Okay. So part of the problem with anytime you say I've long enjoyed working in academia is the person's going to ask, can you do the job? Can you do it long term? And all these sorts of questions. And especially if you're talking, and this makes it seem like this person is an academic. And if, again, I'm talking about law firms would think that way. But okay, I did assist omnibus to secure my interest in dispute resolution. There's a lengthy absence of play full-time outside the home. I've been deeply involved in part-time and freelance work, volunteer activities, continue education in the arts while raising a family. Okay. All right. This part here is actually pretty good. And I'll talk about that in a second. All this stuff here is not helpful, but let's talk about how this letter. So again, if the objective of the letter is to make the person likable, to want the job, to be a cultural fit and to be likable, this letter could really be fixed quite a bit. So let's talk about how to do that. And I do think there's a way to do it. So what I like about this letter is a person talks about a lengthy gap since I was employed full-time outside the home. I've been deeply involved in this while raising a family. I'm now committed to returning to the workforce. So here, let's say the person's applying for a job. You would say something along the lines of, I am writing to apply for this job. And then you would tell the job, whatever the job is, ADR, such and such there. Let me see how this person's doing this. Okay. I have not been working the past several years because I am a single mother. I'm just giving you an example. Single mother and needed and raised a family. And I am full in title, income, salary, and very much committed very much like the opportunity. To be considered. Something about like this, and I'm not going to do too much more with this, be considered for this job. Position. Something along this is going to make much more recently to return to the workforce. Something like this is likely to make more of a connection, and we can talk more about this if this person has questions after we do the next one. But this is recently returned to the workforce. So something like this is much more likely to get the person, I've spoken to so and so about it. To X person about it. And very much appreciate something like that. So this sort of thing a short letter like this is much more likely to make a connection. Now, I'm not saying what needs to be written, but the way it reads now is that the person is just talking about all their experience, everything that is already on their resume, and it's not in trying to look strong and all this stuff. And really, this person is going to be much better off with something like this and it could even be better than that. But all this information could theoretically go on there, being flexible in the title and salary and someone taking a chance on the person, because that's essentially what they're asking. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. Patent prosecution attorney position. Okay, firm contact information. Okay, so dear, I'm interested in your job posting because this is good. Okay, let's see if this person writes well. New. Let's see right here. Okay, so this is an 80. Let's see, is there any correctness? Yeah, so this is actually pretty good. You can see there's not a lot of things, but the clarity of it could be improved. But this actually person says they write well, and they do. But again, these scores should be over 99. Okay, so let's see, dear hiring manager. Okay, so this information is probably not necessary if you see this. This is already on the resume, so it writes well as detailed. And then these terms described there's a better way of doing that. It would be something like my colleagues have often noted that, that sort of thing. One of the things that is probably going on here, just so you understand why the job listing would say something like that, this person is very smart who wrote this, because typically a reason that a lot of times that the job listing may say something like that is they may have lost someone or let someone go that didn't write well or wasn't detail oriented and conscientious. And so that's why they're saying that. And then some sort of quote there would be nice. And then this is actually very good too. In the past couple of years, I served as a primary caregiver to my husband and then to my mother. Wow. And this is very good too. Wow. This is very good as well. Wow. Okay. Okay, so this doesn't need to be there. Wow, this is actually, I'm very pleased to see this cover letter. Wow. Yeah, it's a good cover letter. So this is actually a very good cover letter. I usually don't see cover letters as good in these sorts of meetings, but this is very good. Most of the stuff that is on your resume, you can see here all these sorts of things that the person has put. You never need to repeat your resume. What's very good about this is this person is making a connection with the employer and basically making themselves seem sympathetic and discussing why they're not working. So this is very good. You don't need to talk about being eager. But this is very, very good. The reason it's good is because the person's talking about the job listing. They're talking about why they're good for that, and they're doing it very succinctly. And then they're also talking about, and there's probably a better way, you could say since 2020 or whatever, but this is very good. So I'm very pleased with this cover letter. I think this is an example of exactly, I think this person might have put something here. Okay, what you should do. Again, remember these rules. And we have 3 of these. So what I'm going to do is I'll do one more, then I will take questions. And if there's more resumes that people have put in the chat, I will review those. We'll take a quick break in about 5 minutes after we do this. But you can see here, wanting the job, cultural fit, do we like you, and all that sort of thing. So this is very good. One other thing too is you don't need to tell people to contact you at an email and all this sort of thing. You don't need to give contact information. You do not need to tell people how to contact you on your letter. just waste space, and the employer can figure it out. Okay. But yeah, this is a good cover letter. So this is a very good example. I will send this off also again to everyone so you can see. But these are two people that both have been taking care of people and left the workforce. And yeah, but that's great. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Okay, I'm writing to apply for the attorney position in environmental. Currently, I'm a law clerk for the Tribal Trust. I'm a contract attorney working with Sean Gaines in private litigation of Tribal Trust attorneys. These new positions are an excellent opportunity to use my skills and abilities, broader range. Okay, this is a fun letter. I read this and I actually like this person. I don't know why, but there's something that kind of comes through about liking this person. So there's some certain things that this person could do that would make this a better letter. Here, they're really talking about all the different sorts of things they've been doing. And they're talking about all the litigation, and they're talking about basically everything on their resume. They're talking about what they enjoy. They're talking about legal research, and they're talking about scientific stuff, and then they're making all these assumptions about what people do. So most resumes, let me know what else you need from me. You don't need to put stuff like that. I look forward, thank you, fine. The problem with this particular, oh, here we go, we got one more cover letter. Okay. The problem with this particular cover letter is, again, it's just repeating everything that's on the resume. So if there's a position that the person's applying for, that's great. Now, what's interesting about this resume is, I don't know if Tribal Trust is the government, but the person needs to basically give some sort of interest in working for the government, and that's what I would recommend. A lot of times the government doesn't know how interested people are interested in working for them. So there needs to be some sort of statement of why this particular job and what the person is interested in. In this particular cover letter, I don't have a problem with it. Is the person is not why this job does the person know about the work, what kind of work they do, what sort of work, does the person want to work for the government? Person want to work for the government, all these sorts of questions. And then, but what I like about this person is what I would try to do is I would try to make some sort of connection between working for the Tribal Trust, and I don't know if that's government, and working for the Environmental Natural Resources Division. Okay, let's see this particular one. Okay, and then I think this is the last one. Okay, I'm interested. Okay, I don't know if I can help this person, this letter here. There's not really much going on here. It's a foreign letter and it's not really connecting with a U.S. legal employer at all. For a motivational interview. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break just for 2 or 3 minutes. I will come back and I will answer questions that people may have about these or anything I covered earlier here. And then I will also review more cover letters if you put them in the chat or the Q&A, and I will do those. And I apologize for talking so long. I just wanted to make sure that I covered all this. And then I am excited to hear everyone's questions and about these cover letters as well. And as we take questions, we'll also develop more rules, and I'll send this to everyone at the end of the call. All right, just a few minutes and we'll be back. Thanks. Okay, and I'll start answering questions, and then some people, oh, great. So we got some more cover letters, so we'll review those, and then we'll take questions. And then if anybody has any more questions as well, then that's great. So if you can add those, but I'll start with the questions. Okay, so this is the first question. One thing I wanted, just a quick point that I think is really important for everyone to understand is jobs are gotten and people hire people based on connection. And so the connection is very important. And the extent your cover letter is your one opportunity to make a connection. And what I mean by connection is, let me just put this down as a rule, is I'll just give you some examples. So all the time I'm talking to candidates, and I remember not too long ago talking to this candidate, and he'd gone to like Rutgers or something, was in the middle of his class, and working at a good firm, a major US American law firm in New York City, and one of the largest firms in the world. And his job started maybe in January or something, as opposed to September when everyone else did. And he hadn't done a summer associate job or anything anywhere. And I was like, wow, like this is crazy. How did you get this job? And he said, went to the dog park and I was walking my dog, and it was in New Jersey somewhere. And the partner and his wife were there from this firm. And he said, why don't you send me your resume and I'll be happy to talk to you. And so that's how that person got a job. And so people get jobs based on connection all the time. Numerous placements I made, more than I can count, were based on connection. And so when you're trying to get a job, the best tool that you have to get any job is making connection with an employer. And getting that connection is, if you can't, is through the cover letter, is really is your best tool if you can use it. So some sort of connection is important. And that means if this person is able to connect with someone that raised children and went back to work. If this person, someone respects them for what they did, and all these things are about connection. So I just can't stress enough the importance of connection. So how should I frame a cover letter when I was fired from my last job? Especially a new attorney where my experience was less than 6 months. I was laid off after only a few months by an inexperienced partner supervisor. And now I'm trying to change my thing in a partner line. Okay, so the first thing is, this is just a rule that I would recommend, is if a firm doesn't have the money to pay you and they lay you off, and it's a small firm, or I don't know what it would be, but then you don't really need to say anything about it. If they ask you about it in the interview, that's perfectly fine, but you don't need to say anything about it. You just apply for the job. And you could say I was laid off, but one of the things I would say about what you're saying, inexperienced partner supervisor, and that may be the issue, but a lot of times, and this is what most people do, so you're not alone, but you shouldn't be blaming, you need to take a look at what you could have done differently instead of blaming the firm for laying you off. So maybe you could have worked hard, or maybe you could have done something. So the kind of letter that employers never see is, I didn't bill enough hours and now I know the importance of really getting work, and they never see stuff like that. But if you're ever accountable and you take accountability for this stuff, that's very rare. And that's not something people ever see. I would not necessarily blame the firm. I would think about what you could have done differently, and then just not do that in your next position. People learn all sorts of lessons in different jobs, and that may be one of them. Okay, let's see here. Okay, that gets some more cover letters. Let me see here. Okay, so this is another question. So this is a good one. May be wrong, but it seems that most online job postings do not require a cover letter. Should you try to submit one even if there's no way to do it? So yes, you can. It's interesting. Like, I had opening recently for a COO and for our company, and received hundreds of applications, but only a few people went out of their way to message me on LinkedIn and connect with me, and then try to tell me how much they were interested in the job, and then send a cover letter through that, even if they'd send another one. And that got my attention. And I'm like, I got to respond to these people. And so these people actually rose to the very top of my pile, even though I had all these other applicants, because I'm like, oh boy, I got these people connecting with me and messaging me on LinkedIn. I better respond to them. And then I looked at their stuff and it got my attention. So your cover letter, if you have another way of getting in touch with people, or the people that are in charge of hiring and getting there, very smart, because that worked with me. All the stories I've told you today. And then one person talked about how they'd worked in another league. I think they were working in a law firm doing COO type work or something, and it worked. So yes, so anything you can do to get the employer's attention is a big deal, and you should do your best to get attention. And I would recommend sending something, find out who the person is on LinkedIn, or texting or emailing the person yourself, or emailing the hiring partner if it's a law firm and it's not, no person is listed, or person in charge of the practice group. Getting the person's attention is huge, and it can make a major difference. So if you don't do that, then you're going to not rise to the top of the pile. So I'll tell you another thing that's very interesting. So at BCG, like when we're submitting candidates to firms, like we don't just submit them with a resume and cover letter to an email address or an online portal. We also usually send a fax, even though people don't use faxes anymore. Then we'll also send written letters that we print, and we'll do everything that we possibly can to get attention. And so your job, and that's one of and it works because not everybody reviews every email, but they certainly take a look at faxes. Not everybody reviews every fax, but they certainly, if they get a letter in the mail and they open it up and it sits on their desk, it makes a big difference. So these are tools and things that you should be doing to get a job, and you should make sure that you get your cover letter out there. It makes a difference, and especially if there's no way to do it. The people that get attention, again, like I showed you up here earlier, we hire people that want the job. So everybody does. So if somebody wants the job and there's no way to submit a cover letter, and you're able to submit a cover letter through LinkedIn or through finding the person's contact information, then that's much better than what other people are doing. Other people are just like lemmings and not doing these other things. So I definitely would recommend that. So that's a great question. Thank you. This person's name is David. And someone just said the chat is disabled. Where do I send my cover letter to be reviewed? Just send it into the chat in the webinar. Okay, so here's another question. So someone says, when writing a cover letter, who is the best department to address it to? So I'm going to give you some advice that no one's ever going to tell you, but I'm going to give it anyway. So there was a guy named Wayne Starr, and he's not alive anymore. He was a Yale Law School graduate, and he started this business where he would help people mail out their resumes. And so we used to have a business doing that and probably still should, because it's extremely effective. I'm mailing people's resumes out to employers. But what Wayne said is that you always send a letter to the CEO of a company. He was talking about executives getting positions, because if it goes to the CEO of the company, then the CEO is always going to forward it to the HR department, and the HR department's going to pay attention to it if it goes to the CEO. Very interesting. So if it goes to the CEO, then the HR department, and it comes from the CEO, they don't know how the CEO got it. They don't know if it's a friend of theirs or whatever, but many times they're more likely to get jobs. Most law firms have recruiting departments and recruiting coordinators whose job is to get those resumes so the hiring partners and the managing partners are not bothered by them. And especially with recruiting firms, if a recruiting firm sends something to a hiring partner, then they'll be told, oh, you got to work with this person. But the point is that if you're just applying for firms and jobs, you have a lot of options of who to send your cover letter to. If you're applying for a certain type of job I meet partners all the time, and they're like, we're desperate for people in this practice area, but you wouldn't know it when you talk to the recruiting department. And so the recruiting department has this role in firms, and it's not a bad role, it's what they're doing, where they're told by the powers that be, meaning the executive power of the firm, who they should be hiring and who they shouldn't, meaning what department. So if the law firm wants to invest in its corporate, or they want to invest in its IP, then they're going to hire people in those departments. Even if bankruptcy has a need, they may not want to hire in bankruptcy, because who knows. But so sometimes you're actually much better off. You can write the recruiting department, and you should. And again, I'm not trying to get in trouble here, but if you write the managing partner of a practice, the head of a practice area, or you write someone and the employer, if you're applying to in-house, if you write the CEO, if you write someone in addition to these recruiting departments, that can often be very smart, because you're getting the attention of people that were something where if someone asks about a resume, they're like, oh, what about this one I received? So I personally think that's very smart. And I'm not telling you to do a runaround of a recruiting department, but if you have the ability to write other people, that can often be very effective. And there is nothing wrong with that, because those are the people that want the people. So it's the recruiting departments in law firms were essentially started because the law firms grew very big, and it just took too much time for hiring partners and others to go through all the resumes. And then not only that, but they were dealing with recruiters all day long. So the recruiters would always tell them about other jobs, and then they could never hold on to anyone, which is funny. But you just have to be careful think about how to get a position and with someone that you want and get someone's attention. And if you really want to work somewhere, that can be an effective way. Okay, well, this question is, what is the best way for an attorney to show interest in a certain position in their cover letter? So the best way is to basically mention the position, and talk about why this is important to you. So, and so many times, if a law firm has a position, for example, for a certain type of attorney, and you've know people or you've met people that are in that practice area, or you know the work that the firm does, and you've been liked it, and you have some sort of connection, then you need to try to do that. So typically, you tell people at the beginning of the letter why the position you're applying for. This example right here, which I like very much, was they talked about what they like in the job. Even saying something along the line, this is pretty funny, but you could say something like, I've obviously applied for jobs in this practice area before, but this is one of the most well-written job descriptions I've ever seen, which is complimenting probably the person that's the recruiting person that's written that. Things along those lines make people like you, whereas most people are just thinking about themselves. Let me just see here, answer live, done. I'm just getting some of this cover letter. Someone says, how will the 6-point outline be shared? With the attendees? I will save it towards the end of the call as a Word document. I would just save it as a Word document and send it to everyone. Okay, someone said, is there a need to create customized attorney cover letters tailored to specific practice areas? Yes, you should. Your cover letters and your resume, if you can, should be tailored for specific practice areas. And that's actually a very good point. If you are a specialist in a certain practice area, or you're applying for a certain type of job, then your resume should ideally be tailored to that practice area. So a lot of times people will psych themselves out of jobs. So an example would be, you may be an attorney that does a mix of corporate M&A and securities and applying for a job doing securities. You don't talk about in your resume how you do lots of M&A. You talk about securities, and then you have maybe one little line that says, I also work on M&A stuff sometimes on your resume, but you don't talk about other practice areas. You make sure the cover letter is in the resume or tailored to that. That's what smart people do. Most people are just not being smart and not doing that. But if you do that, you're going to be much better off. Okay, let me just see here. Yes, I will make the notes from this. Someone asked if I can make them printable. I will. Someone with no legal experience write a cover letter for a legal position. Yes. So someone can, that's a good point. Yes, of course you can. So you can, even if you don't have any legal experience, you can definitely write a cover letter for a legal position. Again, it's all this stuff up here, which is the being likable. Do we like you? And are you a good fit? Do you want the job? And all these sorts of things. If you really want to work somewhere and you really want to get experience and you're likable, you can make that come through. So you could say, I will be honest with you. And this is an example would be, I will be honest with you. I have no experience. I have no legal experience. That's just funny. However, I have never failed. I've never failed at anything I've done. Or something like however, I've wanted to be an attorney since I was 6 years old, put myself through college and law school, and I'm the hardest working, most respected, or most hardest working, committed, eager to learn, committed person you will ever meet, something like that. Would also be eternally grateful for any job, any opportunity you gave me. Learn, improve myself. So something along those lines. So if you were to write something like that, think about that. So if you got a letter like this, as opposed to one of these letters, these kind of common letters, I'm currently doing this and blah, 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 and this doesn't make a connection, but this does. So you say something along those lines. And so this is a letter that's making a connection with people. And so when you make a connection like that and you make people like you and you do these things, you show a lot more than the average person, because most people don't act like they want the job, or they don't show like they're going to commit. They're not coming across as likable. They're not coming across as someone that may do the job long term. They're a risk. But a letter of simple this it takes care of the risk. Now I'm just giving you an example. I could write these all day, and each person could do their own, but that's an example. Okay, someone asked, how long should an attorney cover letter be? So this question, it's a good question. It should be long enough. So the letter should be long enough to make a connection. Make a connection and make the person and make the audience like you. And make the reader like you. That's it. And that's really the game. So you want your letter to be, I don't know why that's happening there, but you want to be able to do that. And if you can do that, sorry, I don't know what I'm doing here. That's it. So you can see here, this letter is very short, but this is able to make a connection. And that's really your goal. Okay, I got some more cover letters. Great. So I got some more. Okay, so this person asked, would the last paragraph just be something as simple, I would welcome. So you don't need to say anything in your last paragraph. Oops, sorry. Give me 1 second. I'm just taking out this person's. So everyone says, I welcome the opportunity. No, you don't need to do anything like that. All you need to say is the last paragraph, it can just end. You can just say thank you, and don't say your time and consideration. You can just say thank you. So attorneys, by the way, are paid to be succinct and to make their point, and then to basically, that's it. That's what people want from them. So you need to be able to make your points, I don't know why I did that like that, quickly and without a lot of fluff. And so fluff is things like, thank you for your time and consideration, and just making your points very quick, very, very. Okay, so this is how advisable is to make contact about over an advertised position. It's very advisable. So again, people that get jobs are the ones that get our attention. So it's very advisable to get their attention. So just remember some of the stories I've told so far. Who gets off the wait list, at least used to at the law school? The person that sits in the waiting room and shows that they want the job. Who got my attention for the COO position? The people that were messaging me on LinkedIn and getting my attention. These are the people that get the jobs, especially when there's a lot of applications. So just put yourself. I just want to give you a kind of a understanding of how this works. So employers are sitting there when they have jobs, especially big firms, and they could receive, I don't know, hundreds of applications a week, whether it's from law students what are they supposed to do? It's so much work to review those. Every time they have to open an email, they have to click on something, and then they have to look at the resume. So they just become like dead. It's tough. And so I know I've been reviewing resumes every day for a quarter century, and I like it, but it's very difficult for employers because they have to just review these things all again and again. And very few people are really trying to get their attention. So if you get their attention, that's a big deal. So I'll just tell you real quickly, like what we do at BCG to get the attention of employers. And this is what we do for our candidates. Now, I'm not here to sell anything. So I just want to be very clear, but I want to tell you the lengths that we go. So we email for jobs, or we contact them jobs, and then they meet with us for jobs. So they have conferences with us and meet with jobs, but then we submit with a cover letter to emails, and then by fax, and then a letter. And then not only that, but then we start following up every week. Any news? It sounds crazy, but this is what needs to happen to get people's attention. So the people that get to the top are the ones that get attention. Now, so this is what you need to do if you're trying to get a job. And again, I'm not telling you to harass employers. I don't want to upset our clients, but you really need to be following up with something and doing it, especially if you want the job, because otherwise you're not going to get their attention. Just put yourself in the employer's situation. If you have a job and you get 300 emails about the job, wow, what are you supposed to do? So you'll look at them and you'll get through them, but it's too much work. So what they typically do, and again, I'm not attacking employers, but what tends to happen with jobs is, this is another thing when you're applying for jobs online, is the job will come out, and then you should be applying to that job pretty much right away. Because imagine like you're an employer and you're getting 200 applications or for a job. You look at the applications that come in the first day or so, but then how are you supposed to keep up with all these applications that keep coming in for the same job? You can't. They do, and there's some very sophisticated recruiting departments. I'm not going to get into it, but some of them are just awesome that they're able to do it, but most of them can't. So they'll interview from the first group of people, and then after doing, and so the applications that come later are often not seen. Now, if you're able to follow up and make contact with them in other ways, then your resume can go to the top of the pile. And I'm giving you advice. This could change your career if you do this stuff. Most people won't, but that's how it's done. So you have to somehow do that. And again, I hate to tell people to do this because I don't want to get myself in trouble with employers, but it's the more you follow up, the better. Okay, so common shared experiences versus quite different personal experiences. So yeah, you have to be careful with that. So there's firms that are composed of people that have a lot of shared experiences, and those could be our common experiences, and those could be religious in nature. They could be, it could be, who knows, self-help groups. I don't know, but there's all sorts of different types of things. The idea would be that you would write the person that you have the shared experiences with, and that person would hopefully be but you wouldn't note those, and people can pick that up from your cover letter. I don't want to get too far into it, but just people from different religions will put that on their resume all the time. So if someone has done a mission and they're like LDS, they'll put that on there, and people will, and that's okay. And they do that, and that's how people many times they get jobs. So or they put sports and different things. So you can do that, but you don't always want to highlight that in your resume. You allow people to read into it, I guess, is the answer I'm giving. Is it always practical to read? This person asked, yeah, no, of course it's not always practical to research the name of the person. But if you really want to get a job and you're a good fit for it, then you need to, and you need to research that. Okay, so this is a good point. So what is the line between showing enthusiasm and looking desperate? There is no that. So I don't know how to explain this, but I will explain it. So desperate is when no one will hire you, and so you look that way, and you look needy, and you want people to. But enthusiasm is different. So enthusiasm is, hey, I think you're great. I like you. I like this. I like this employer. I think you could do really well. I think I could do really well there. And this is why I like you, blah, 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 blah. And I will tell you, the most enthusiastic people that I've ever interviewed. I remember years ago, I was in talks with these. It was funny. It was in like 2007 or 8. I don't remember, but it was around that time. And I was in talks with these private equity and companies to basically buy some companies I was running at the time, or to invest in them, or I don't know, to buy them. And then when the bottom fell out, all these guys got laid off. And but they were people that had gotten their MBAs from Harvard and Stanford and stuff, and Duke and all. And so some of them contacted me looking for jobs, and because they thought I needed leadership and with their skills, and these were the best. And they all got jobs. These were the best interviewers some of them I've ever seen. They came in, they were completely prepared. They had spreadsheets and other things and graphs. I'd never seen anything like it, how good they were. And what was funny is one of them I actually made an offer to, and he wanted more money than I was willing to pay. And so he was like, no, it's rejected. Sorry. But this would have been the most desperate job seeker you've ever seen. He came out to my house for dinner. He paid his own way. I think he was on the East Coast. He came and met with me one or two times. He did all these things, and very impressive, and not by all counts desperate, but no, not desperate, enthusiastic. So the more enthusiastic you are, the more you're likely to get a job. And this particular person was competing against a lot of other people for the same type of job, and was the one that got it. Okay, let's see, but he didn't take it. Okay, this is a good question, so I'm going to answer this one, and then I'm going to go back to the cover letters, which will be fun. So let me see here. Left my previous job was breaking my career because I had cancer and then passed away. Okay, you're right. So you don't want to make people think that you're crazy or depressed, and so there are some things that are bad to avoid in cover letters, and so you can just say for childcare or something, and then people can learn about this later. The way to handle this typically is you would probably just say something about childcare in your cover letter, and then you're taking care of a sick family member, and then leave it at that. And then your former employer might mention what happened, or you could maybe bring it up softly in an interview if someone asks. But that's it. So you don't need to, and then that would be the connection you make, but you don't need to bring it up. Yeah, people bring up this kind of stuff all the time. So talking about things that are a little too personal, and I don't know that this is, but you wouldn't want to put that into the cover letter, would be dealing with substance abuse issues, just things along those lines, or mental health issues, or things that people just don't want to hear it, even though they may know about it in the past that something happened, but it's not something you need to be careful. So the question you should always ask with these things is it, because if people think you have problems, like whether it's psychological or whatever, they're just going to hire someone that's not going to have that. So you have to be very careful about that. Now, people think that there's some sort of benefit to you going through some issues, but you don't talk about them directly, then they're going to be more happy. Okay, what should be included in a cover letter for a clerkship opening? That's a good question. Judges typically aren't going to spend a lot of time. And when I worked for a judge, I worked reviewing cover letters and resumes, and so I'm not an expert in it by any stretch of the imagination, but most of the time they're looking for people that just look like they're good fits for a clerkship, which would be an interest in litigation, and just a background that looks like you're going to the best that they can, best, smartest, and best person that they can do. That's pretty much what you want to do. Now, if you're applying for a federal clerkship, judges typically are either Republican or Democrat. If you can point out an affiliation to some sort of political party or someone that may know the judge, or you work for some sort of political person in that party, that can always be helpful. I think that a lot of times judges will hire along political lines. That's just something, and of course, that's not something all the time, but but it's something to think about. Okay, this is another good question. This person says, how can you demonstrate your knowledge of the industry, which would be, this person's talking about patent law and the firm's practice area in a cover letter. You typically want to do that on your resume. So your resume is what does that. So your resume does that. Now, if you've done a lot of different types of things, you can always do what's called a transaction sheet. This is very advisable, by the way, for corporate, and then for different types of corporate litigation, or not litigation, and transactional practice areas. So if you've done, and sometimes patent, you can list the types of patents you've done. I like transaction sheets, and those can go as an addendum to your resume. And the reason I like them is because the best attorneys typically keep them. So what they do is they write down every transaction they've ever done, and then they feature those, and they're very proud every time they do them, and they keep track of them. And not everybody does that, but the ones that do, it actually makes a big difference. Keeping a list of all those is cool. It's like you're putting a notch in your belt, and you're very proud every time you do them. A lot of people, most attorneys in transactional practice areas, don't do that. So if you can do that, that's very helpful. And then in patent, the way you would talk about that is you would basically list all the patents that you were issued or the patents you worked on, and then do that. And this is something that a lot of patent attorneys do. And it's very helpful. Okay, this is another question, but I'll answer this one. Thank you for all the questions too, by the way. This is great. Okay, this is interesting. So a lot of times there's this question comes up about switching practice areas, which is not something, by the way, that recruiters can help you do, but switching practice area. When you switch practice areas, and this is difficult, and this is also, and practice settings, this is not, if you want to work in a law firm, it can be very difficult to do. So typically law firms are, and I've developed this ranking system just so it makes sense, but they're ranked here. I rank them from the standpoint of 5, 4 through 2, 1. This is like your very top firms, hardly anybody can get a job with. And then these are your AmLaw to 100, AmLaw to 100 to 200, largest 200 firms. These are your kind of mid-sized firms and regional firms. original. These are going to be insurance defense and funds of defense and company firms that represent a mix of individuals, businesses, and these are going to be businesses, individuals only for the most part. Okay, so these firms basically, and all this is about is these firms pay the highest salaries, they have the highest billing rates. The same thing with these, and these are going to be lower salaries, lower billing rates. These are going to be even lower salaries and lower billing rates. And these are going to be the lowest salaries and lower billing rates. And you could probably take this 1 to 10 too. But the idea is if you're trying to work in a practice here where you don't have a lot of experience, you're probably going to have to start out at 2 firm if you want to do business related work, because who's going to hire you if you don't have the experience? Because law firms are looking for, just like you would be, they're looking for people that can do the job, that are going to commit, that want the job, and all those sorts of things. So there's no way that a law firm, a big law firm, or even a mid-sized law firm is probably going to hire you if you don't have that. So the idea would be you basically would have to start out at a firm that's willing to hire you to do that type of work. And if you were trying to do business related law, you could start out at a firm doing trust and estates or simple corporate law or something along those lines to get exposure, or maybe to 2 firm, but that's really the best. Or you want to do real estate and construction, same thing. You could start out helping individuals with real estate related things. And one of the nice things about the legal profession that I actually think is very positive is you can start out at a 1 or 2 firm, and if you conduct your career correctly, end up at a 4 firm. Meaning, if you start out and you can get business and you increase, you can move to a 1 from a 2 to a 3 to even a 4. And I've even seen people do a 5 before. It's hard to believe, but it happens. So there's always, and it doesn't matter what your background is. If you're committed, you can do it. Now 5s are very hard because a lot of those firms, most of them don't even hire laterally, and they only hire at a law school, but that's something you could do. This person says, can you close a letter by simply saying, I look forward to hearing from you? Sure, you can say that, but you look forward to getting rejected, or I don't know, but you don't need to say anything, but you could say that. Yes, of course. And okay, let's see here. Okay, this is an interesting question. This person says, what kind of jobs should a person educated as an attorney without a license to practice law apply for when the person enters practice law for law firms? So you can apply for all sorts of jobs. It depends on what you like. If you like writing, you can do writing. You can be a paralegal. A lot of people do that. You can do other careers. You can do your own business. You have to decide agent or realtor. There's just all sorts of things you can do. Going to law school, by the way, does not mean you have to be an attorney. So I remember when I went to law school, my grandmother said to me, well, you don't have to be an attorney. You can, my father she said, my father was an attorney, but he never practiced. He was a banker, and his father was an attorney and never practiced, and he was a banker or something. So you don't have to do anything. The law is a good way to get experience, or a lot of times people that are just very motivated go to law school and they become all sorts of entrepreneurs and other things and do other types of businesses, or there's anything you want to do. You can become a novelist. I sold one house to the guy that he went to my law school, and he wrote Con Air and some other screenplays, and they become screenwriters. They can become, there's a lot where I live. There's a lot of real estate agents that went to law school. There's one of my friends but they become novelists. There's all sorts of things. You can start businesses. You can become an executive in a company. You can do anything you want. And lawyers have a lot of good skills a lot of times. Okay, this person said, break and prepare. For example, countries we need to mention the cover letter. A lot of times in the cover letter, if you have relocated somewhere to a new area, and you're living there now. So sometimes people, and this is actually very important. So sometimes people they'll get married and move somewhere, or they'll move somewhere because their mate moved there, or their significant other. They'll move to another country, and meet with a significant other, or even alone, or whatever. Whatever the reason is that you have a break in your career because of that, this is something, yes, you can discuss in your cover letter. Okay, yes, you can discuss it real briefly. Okay, and I'll actually just answer that live. It's a Samsung phone. Okay, then we could have done that one. Okay, so I'm going to look at some cover letters now. So just give me 1 second. And I'm sorry about the delay in looking at your cover letters. I just wanted to do all that first. Okay, this first one, we'll go back to the cover. And again, I will send everyone these cover letters, this PDF when we're done. I'll save this and send it to everyone. Okay, read your publication about a vacancy of a council of some investments, Jeopardy. Sorry, I'm just thinking about this. Wow, it's a good resume. This is actually fairly interesting. This is a pretty good resume. I don't even need to run this through Grammarly or anything to know that it's pretty well, that grammar and everything's well done. So it's done well. It's short. And I like this about the reason for wanting to work at the International Finance Corporation. You could shorten this. I'm applying for the council position responsible for a project. This job is, but that's good. And I think this is a very good cover letter. And even please do, and please contact me if you have any questions. I think it's very direct. I think it's good. I think that this use of the words like passion, who's passionate about handling distressed investments? That's great. But I'm joking, but yeah, it's very good. Yeah, I don't really have any good suggestions for this person's resume, which I'm happy to see. One of the things I don't like about this, and I'll just to be critical, is a lot of times when you review a resume, you look at that, you can see it's just all I. And that's okay. It's okay. But sometimes maybe focusing this a little bit more on the person, but I think this is very good. A lot of times, and I don't know what this person's resume looks like, but a lot of times people with very good resumes don't need to say a lot because everything that's on the resume already makes the point. And this seems like an example of that. And I like this. I think it's a good resume. I wish I could be a little more critical of it, but unfortunately, I think it's very good. Yeah. Please consider my CV. That's very good. Yeah, let me see here. And I apologize for not having more weeks of that particular person's resume. Let me see here. Oh, so this person, sorry, they put on their name. So I'm going to make sure I don't put that. Okay. Okay. Here's another one. Okay, dear hiring team. So again, you want to make sure that you do what you can to make sure that you talk to someone directly. This is not a resume, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but just for everyone here, all this information is already on the resume, so you don't need to put that. All this is also probably on the resume. And then there's a lot of, I think this is another example of something that needs to be proofed a little bit. And again, I'll send this to everyone. Okay, so all this stuff, this volunteer activity and stuff is interesting. And okay, so these are good things that are connecting with a person, so that's good. And then communicates effectively. You're gonna work multiple. Okay, so I would just say this particular cover letter needs to be shortened quite a bit. I'm not going to spend a ton of time doing this, but a lot of this stuff is already on the resume. Again, you don't want to repeat everything because no one's going to read this. Everything you can do to kind of cut out everything that's already on just the complicated intricacies around the world. I don't know about that, but this should be rewritten. And then this person, I can tell is not a native English speaker. The biggest thing I would recommend for you would be just to make sure, and this goes for everybody. Employers don't think it's the end of the world especially if you're applying for a patent position. They don't think it's the end of the world if you don't speak, if you're not a native English speaker. But the problem is if you're not, then it really comes through. Here you can just see this editing and things you can do here to fix it. And so you need to make sure that everything you write goes through a grammar program. And the problem is if you don't speak native English, which I'm sure is a lot of people applying for legal jobs, the more you write, the more you're demonstrating that. So many times just writing very little is going to be helpful. And then a lot of this stuff here will be an example of things that could go on a resume and be more helpful. And then so you just need to be very careful. But I would recommend running this through a grammar program and then also shortening it. All you really need to say is why you want to be a patent engineer if you're not currently doing it. It sounds like, I don't know. And then why this position? And then that's really the main thing with that. Let me see here. So I hope that helps. I apologize that I can't give more advice. Let me see here. Okay, we've got one more cover letter, maybe another one, and then I'll print everyone's notes. I print these to send to everyone on the call, and we'll also try to send it to the people that were on the call. Okay, let's see here. Oh, sorry. Just give me 1 second. Oh, this is, this is actually anonymous. I can do it this way. Give me 1 second. Okay, I was glad to see a recent job posting first. Okay, all right. Okay, so a lot of times people will say, I was happy to see this job posting, and that, by the way, this type of cover letter is very common. But you don't. Okay, let me keep reading. Give me 1 second, I'm sorry. This is actually a pretty interesting cover letter. Okay, so what I would recommend for this person, so this person is a corporate attorney, so it's the same thing that, okay, this is good too. This particular firm is looking for the job this person is applying for, they're looking for someone that's fluent in Spanish, and this person's fluent in Spanish, so that's very good how they did that. They also write very well, so they talk about why it's so good. This is actually an excellent opening paragraph. The other thing I would say too, but that I like about this cover letter is you can see the difference in terms of how this is written and structured. So this person is making it very easy for the reader to follow what's going on. One of the things, sometimes they say experience, career break, career interest. What you would do if this is done even better, and you would say why I'm interested in this employer specifically. I'm working for whatever the employer's name is, and then you would say the employer's name. And then you would say, and then here you would say, I took a career break in year, whatever, to follow my husband, Yeah, and we're in California. So one of the things too, this is someone that's not a U.S. native English speaker. I would just say I recently took the California bar exam and am now a permanent resident. Would probably be better. The only reason would be because talking about that you're following your husband is, I guess it's okay, but you wouldn't say California, U.S. That's not how attorneys talk. And then you would just say California. And then this is actually a pretty good letter. I want to work in an international company. Here you would I'm searching for a company where I can work for several years. That's good, but you need to connect actually with the company itself. So why that company? Not just because they're international. So you need to talk about how that company relates to exactly what you do. So how company relates to what you do. And then all this stuff about it be a privilege, and this kind of don't talk about, I would strongly consider relocating. So the problem with all that kind of stuff is why wouldn't they just hire someone that's already in that location? So never say that. You need to say, I'm here. That's that. So the problem is, like, one of the things is when you start a cover letter, this is something for everyone to understand, is the cover letter is always at 100%. So just think about it that way. Then If you start writing all this other stuff, I would think about relocating there, or I want to join a big company because it's international. You suddenly are disqualifying yourself from a job because what you're doing is you're giving the firm reasons not to hire you. So if you want to work in some place in, I don't know, in Los Angeles, and you're in Los Angeles, you tell them you're in Los Angeles, but you don't say I would strongly consider relocating, because no one's going to hire someone that's interested in may consider relocating if they already can hire people in that location. And if you're doing that in California, I will tell you that any employer can find people to speak Spanish in California. Okay, let me just see here. I think I may have gotten all these cover letters. All right. Someone said I have to leave the call. I don't know if you discussed the issue of the older attorney. You convince them they plan to stick around. Yes, I think if you're older and you plan to stick around, you could just say something along the lines of, I hope to make this my final employer, or something along those lines. Let me just see if there's any other questions. And thanks everyone for all the questions today. I did appreciate, they were all great questions. And yeah. And I think that's about it. I will check if everyone got that, but if not, thanks for being on the webinar and appreciate everyone's time. Thanks.